1 month after the wedding ended, my fiancée Joanna finally rushed back, only after accompanying her childhood sweetheart on a trip. She never mentioned the fact that she had fled the wedding. Instead, she said arrogantly, "The wedding can be held again. Inject capital into my family's company immediately, or I won't register the marriage with you." What she didn't know was that I had already become a real husband to the fake bride she had hired. In my previous life, I exposed the fake bride in public, forcing Joanna to go through with the wedding with me. But that same day, her childhood sweetheart died on the operating table. After marriage, she never mentioned his death and remained as affectionate with me as ever. Yet on our first wedding anniversary, she pushed me off a cliff and watched me fall to my death. Before I died, she said viciously, "If you hadn't forced me to come back and get married, he wouldn't have died." Only then did I realize that she had always blamed his death on me and had never loved me even a little. After being reborn, the first thing I did was complete the wedding with the fake bride. This time, I want to see for myself, without the support of the Gonzalez family, how she plans to save the crumbling Castro group. Chapter 1. Bride. Are you willing to marry the handsome groom beside you, whether in wealth or in poverty? I am willing. The woman's voice came from beneath the veil, slightly muffled. The guests all sighed in admiration. They praised Joanna Castro, the eldest daughter of the Castro family, for her deep devotion to me, insisting on completing this wedding of the century despite suffering from a severe cold. Afraid that I might feel wronged. Wait. The veiled woman standing before me avoided my gaze, fine beads of sweat forming on her forehead. I smiled and asked, "Joanna, you don't look well. Are you too tired?" She nervously cleared her throat. "Yes, I gestured for the officiant to pause the ceremony and led the bride into the lounge. The phone on the table vibrated at just that moment. More than a dozen unread messages, all from Ethan. "You already know the bride is fake, right? Surprise. Joanna and I are watching your wedding live stream together." Attached was a photo, Joanna leaning her head affectionately against Ethan's shoulder, her posture relaxed and intimate. "Oh, and I almost forgot to mention, it was my idea. This wedding is nothing more than a little game she's playing to amuse me. I quickly typed out a reply and sent it. "Is that so? Do you believe that with just one phone call from me, she'll ditch you and come crawling back to beg me?" Sure enough, the other end of the phone fell silent for a long time. Good. The fish had taken the bait. I put my phone away and turned to look at the silent bride beside me. She glanced at me uneasily. "Actually, I patted her on the shoulder. "Rachel, don't be nervous." She instantly let out a sigh of relief. "So you already knew." After a brief silence, she seemed to make up her mind and took a deep breath. "Joanna isn't worth marrying. She did this today on purpose, to humiliate you." I suddenly leaned in close to her. "I didn't stop the wedding to expose you. I just wanted you to help me put on a little act." It was only after I died in my previous life that I learned Rachel had been quietly watching over me for years. When she heard the news of my death, she was the only one who refused to believe that I had simply slipped and fallen off the cliff. Later, she discovered that the real murderer was Joanna, but unable to find solid evidence, she chose to drag Joanna down with her, dying together on the anniversary of my death. Tears slid down my face without my noticing. Rachel reached out helplessly, then froze midair. "If you feel wronged, I can." I looked at her seriously. "Rachel, listen carefully. The person I want to marry is you." When we returned to the venue, the officiant smiled and announced, "Now, please have the bride and groom exchange rings." I picked up the ring, but when I pushed it to her knuckle, it got stuck, completely. She awkwardly tried to force it on, but I pressed down on her hand. Whispers rippled through the guests, the murmurs buzzing like mosquitoes. "What's going on? Is the ring the wrong size? How could something this important be messed up?" The Gonzalez family and the Castro family are being far too careless. Below the stage, Joanna's parents' faces instantly darkened. They exchanged a look, panic and unease flashing in each other's eyes. It seemed they had known about the farce Joanna had arranged all along, and had chosen not to stop it. My mother frowned deeply as well, looking at me with concern. I gave her a reassuring glance, signaling her to stay calm. Then, under the stunned and uncertain gazes of everyone present, I lifted Rachel's veil. My God, the bride isn't Joanna at all. Then where is the real bride? Chapter 2. Joanna's mother was the first to react. Throwing all dignity aside, she rushed onto the stage. What is going on? Who are you? Exactly. Joanna's father's face was livid. He shouted at the chaotic crowd of guests and reporters below the stage. "Quiet. Everyone be quiet. There's been a minor mishap at the wedding. We'll resolve it immediately." What a spectacle. In my previous life, the one panicking on the stage had been me. Now, it was Joanna's parents. My mother stood up in shock as well, looking at me anxiously. "Joel, what on earth is going on?" I turned and gave my parents a reassuring look. Under the astonished gazes of everyone present, I took Rachel's hand and said, "Thank you all for coming today to attend the wedding of Rachel and me. Due to a small oversight, The wedding posters and the rings were prepared incorrectly. I paused, then continued. But it's nothing serious, the wedding will proceed. Hearing this, Rachel lifted her chin and calmly accepted the scrutiny of the crowd. Joanna's mother trembled with rage as she stared at me. Joel, are you out of your mind? Do you even know what you're doing? Joanna's father also rushed over, lowering his voice as he snapped. Joel, stop fooling around. End the wedding right now. I ignored them and handed the microphone to the stand-in beside me. Rachel, tell everyone why you're standing here today. Rachel met my gaze and smiled. Her voice was steady and clear as she spoke. I'm standing here today because Joanna paid me $100,000 to impersonate her and attend the wedding in her place. The entire venue erupted. What? She paid someone to marry in her place? Is Joanna insane? After being exposed so publicly, the blood drained completely from Joanna's parents' faces. My father's anger finally exploded. Pointing at Joanna's father, he cursed furiously. So this is the Castro family. So this is Joanna. Treating my son's marriage like a joke, this is beyond insulting. My mother's eyes were red with fury as well. She strode onto the stage, shielding me behind her as she said coldly to the Castro family. This marriage is off. From this day forward, the Gonzalez family will have nothing to do with the Castro family ever again. Seeing the alliance on the verge of collapse, Joanna's mother panicked. Joel, it's all Joanna's fault for being immature and reckless. I'll have her come apologize to you immediately. I sneered. Fine, I'll give her one more chance. If you can get through to her on the phone, I'll pretend none of this ever happened. Rachel tightened her grip on my hand. I leaned in and whispered softly in her ear. Don't worry, Joanna won't come back. Joanna's mother clutched at this last shred of hope, frantically dialing Joanna's number. Once, twice, 3 times. All that came through the receiver was the same cold female voice. Sorry, the number you have dialed is powered off. I put on a disappointed expression. Looks like Miss Castro has no intention of returning. Security, remove the irrelevant people. Joanna's parents were dragged out by security as countless reporters excitedly shoved cameras into their faces. My mother held my hand. She didn't ask a single question, she just kept saying over and over. Joel, no matter what decision you make, your father and I will always support you. My father patted my shoulder. Warmth spread through my chest. In my previous life, I had stubbornly insisted on marrying Joanna, falling out badly with my family. After my death, they aged overnight. In this life, I will never make the same mistake again. As for Joanna, the one truly responsible, I won't let her off so easily. Once the wedding proceedings ended, I immediately called my special assistant. Terminate all cooperation with the Castro family at once. Withdraw every cent of the capital we injected, leave them nothing. Chapter 3. The news that I had married Rachel didn't spread right away. To stabilize its stock price, the Castro family pulled strings to suppress the story. As soon as the wedding ended, Rachel and I went straight to register our marriage. Afterward, she told me she needed to go abroad for a few days due to some personal matters. Meanwhile, completely in the dark, Joanna spent 2 carefree days holed up in her villa with Ethan. Only then did she belatedly sense that something was wrong. At times like this, I would normally have caused a huge scene already, forcing her to come back. Yet now, there wasn't a single ripple of movement from me. Distracted, Joanna scrolled through her phone, not even reacting when Ethan called her. Something was off. That man must be playing hard to get. Thinking this, Joanna curled her lips into a smile. I really had been spoiling him too much. I hadn't expected to run into 2 such bad omens at my father's business banquet. Joanna noticed me immediately, but when she saw me chatting with another woman, her expression darkened instantly. After spotting me, Ethan leaned against Joanna as if unintentionally and said in a deliberately weak voice, Joanna, I'm not feeling well. My head feels really dizzy. Joanna supported him attentively, her eyes flicking toward me as if by accident. She was probably waiting for me to walk over on my own. Unfortunately for her, she was disappointed. From start to finish, I didn't spare her so much as a glance. At last, she couldn't hold back anymore. She strode over to our table and slammed her wine glass down hard before speaking. Joel, are you angry because I had someone stand in for me at the wedding? I couldn't even be bothered to look at her. I stood up, ready to leave. That wedding happened because Ethan was sick. She continued. It was an emergency, so I couldn't make it. Ethan staggered over, pretending to be unsteady, and blocked my path. Mr. Gonzalez, please don't blame Joanna. It's all because my body failed me and delayed your wedding. After hearing this, Joanna actually laughed in anger as she looked at me. Joel, how did I never realize you were this petty? It was just a wedding, wasn't it? As she spoke, she reached out as if it were only natural and grabbed my arm. My gaze turned icy as I flung her hand away. Miss Castro, mind your manners. Didn't your parents tell you about the wedding? Joanna froze. Tell me what? Ethan panicked and grabbed my wrist, trying to smooth things over. Mr. Gonzalez, don't be like this. Joanna did it for your own good. Though his words sounded conciliatory, his fingernails dug viciously into my skin, making me suck in a sharp breath of pain. I jerked my arm hard. Get lost. Ah. Ethan fell to the ground in a heap, utterly disheveled. Joanna's eyes went bloodshot. She hurried to help Ethan up and roared at me. You lunatic. Apologize to Ethan right now. I let out a cold laugh and ordered the security guards who were rushing over. Security. Throw them out. Joanna's face turned livid with rage. Don't think this will get my attention. If you behave yourself, I'll go register the marriage with you in a few days. She took it for granted that as long as she was willing to turn back, I would immediately rush over. Overwhelmed with gratitude, I smiled. But I've already gotten married. Chapter 4. The smile on Joanna's face froze instantly. She stood there in a daze, her brows knitting tightly together. What nonsense are you talking about? She took a step forward, her tone arrogant. You say you're married, then why didn't your wife come with you? A mocking curve lifted the corner of my lips. My wife is on a business trip. Unlike certain idle good-for-nothings who can only survive by clinging to a man. Before she could explode, Ethan's eyes reddened beside her, tears welling up on cue. Mr. Gonzalez, how could you say something like that about Joanna? He deliberately paused, successfully drawing Joanna's gaze toward me, now filled with disappointment and fury. Joel, look at how sharp-tongued and nasty you've become. Other than me, who would even want you? Let me make this clear, stop playing these playing hard-to-get games. They only make me look down on you even more. I completely lost my patience. Security, are you deaf? Throw these two out, now. The guards rushed forward, grabbing them from both sides. Joanna struggled wildly, her face twisted as she screamed at me. Joel, how dare you treat me like this? You'll regret it. That very night, I received a message from an unknown number. You think you can steal my Joanna like this? Guess what? She doesn't care at all. She's happily abroad on vacation with me right now. There was no need to guess who sent it. I blocked the number without hesitation. During that time, Joanna's parents still refused to give up and came knocking more than once. I turned them away every single time. A week later, I calculated the time of Rachel's flight landing and drove to the airport to pick her up. The moment I walked into the international arrivals hall, I ran straight into Joanna and Ethan. Both of them were a bit more tanned, wearing sunglasses, looking like they'd just returned from a leisurely vacation. When Joanna saw me, she smiled smugly. I knew you couldn't let me go. You even came all the way here to pick me up. I couldn't be bothered to respond, looking at her as if she were an idiot. Ethan spoke in a fake, mocking tone. Oh come on, Mr. Gonzalez, don't be angry. Joanna didn't mean to leave you behind. As her fiancée, you should be more understanding, shouldn't you? Joanna clearly enjoyed that. She raised her hand to hook it around my arm, but I sidestepped and avoided her. She didn't get angry. Instead, she looked even more pleased, assuming I was just throwing a little tantrum. All right, stop sulking. Once we register the marriage, I'll make it up to you with an even more luxurious honeymoon. Deal. I walked straight past them and broke into a light jog, pulling Rachel into my arms the moment she came out. Welcome home, honey. Rachel hugged me back and tilted her head up, placing a gentle kiss on my cheek. Behind us, the smug smile on Joanna's face froze solid. After a brief, deathly silence came Joanna's furious, humiliated roar. Joel, have you had enough yet? She charged forward and pointed at Rachel angrily. Just to piss me off. You even hired an actress. Not bad acting. How much did you pay her? Name a price. I'll give you 10 times that. Tell her to get lost right now. Rachel stepped in front of me protectively, her gaze darkening as the air around her dropped to freezing point. I reached out, stopped her, and stood shoulder to shoulder with her, calmly looking at Joanna's twisted expression. Joanna, didn't you want to meet my wife? I looped my arm through Rachel's and smiled brightly. Let me formally introduce her to you. This is my wife, Rachel. Joanna's face drained of all color. How could it be you? Chapter 5. Once she clearly saw who it was, Joanna's expression changed instantly. Joel, do you think I'm an idiot? She pointed at Rachel. Isn't this the stand-in I hired for $100,000? What? Didn't you get enough acting at the wedding? So now you've dragged her along to keep playing at being a loving married couple. Ethan covered his mouth and looked at me in feigned shock, though his eyes were filled with undisguised contempt. Mr. Gonzalez, how could you do this? Joanna is already overwhelmed with the company's problems. Not only are you refusing to help, you're even hiring someone to put on a show just to provoke her. That's really immature of you. He turned to Joanna and gently tried to soothe her. Joanna, don't be angry. Mr. Gonzalez just loves you too much. That's why he's using such childish methods to get your attention. Hearing Ethan's words, Joanna's expression softened considerably. Joel, I really underestimated you. Just to force me back, you'd even stoop to such low tricks. I finally snapped. Joanna, is there something seriously wrong with your brain? But Joanna waved her hand, her tone carrying a trace of impatient concession. Enough, Joel, I get it, you're angry because I couldn't complete the ceremony with you that day, but, at that moment, the phone in her pocket rang frantically. Irritated, she answered it. It was her father. The instant the call connected, her father's desperate roar burst through the phone. You unfilial daughter, the company is on the brink of bankruptcy and you're still out fooling around. Get back here immediately. What? The expression on Joanna's face collapsed in an instant. Her hand gripping the phone trembled violently, her face turning paper white before our eyes. Dad, you must be joking, I kindly reminded her. Oh, right, I forgot to mention this. I've withdrawn all the funds I injected into the Castro family. Think of it as a little surprise from me. But to my surprise, confidence returned to Joanna's face. I knew it. You still can't let me go. You're using divestment to force me to marry you. Since you love me this much, I'll give you a chance. 3 days from now, I'll make it up to you with the grandest wedding the city has ever seen, enough to give the Gonzalez family all the face it needs. By then, have your father reinvest the money. With that, she grabbed Ethan's hand and turned to leave. Ethan glanced back at me with a provocative smile. Watching their self-righteous retreating figures, I couldn't help but laugh in anger. Rachel frowned slightly. Do you want me to deal with her? No need. I'll attend that wedding, and you'll come with me, I said, leaning into her arms and looking up at her. After all, with such a spectacular show coming up, how could we possibly miss it? Chapter 6. Joanna Castro really outdid herself this time. The scale of the wedding was even grander than the previous one. Media outlets from across the entire city were invited, and she had already booked the trending spots on every major social platform. The headlines were eerily consistent. Castro Group CEO Joanna, love undiminished, makes up for regret with a wedding of the century for the young master of the Gonzalez family. My parents were so furious they nearly stormed over to the Castro residence to demand an explanation. I stopped them just in time. Dad, Mom, don't be angry, just watch the show, I reassured them calmly, already having the entire plan laid out in my mind. On the day of the wedding, I chose a casual suit, comfortable, understated, yet elegant. Rachel wore a small dress in the same color palette. Hand in hand, she accompanied me to the venue. By the time we arrived, the wedding site was already packed shoulder to shoulder. Camera flashes went off non-stop. Joanna stood at the end of the red carpet in a white wedding gown, a look of absolute certainty on her face. When she saw me, her smile stiffened for a split second before she quickly regained her composure. She probably thought I was there to give in, still sulking, which was why I was dressed like this. The reporters swarmed us like sharks that had smelled blood. Mr. Gonzalez, are you attending today as the groom? Mr. Gonzalez, have you and President Castro reconciled? It's rumored that you were seen behaving intimately with another woman at the airport a few days ago. Was that a misunderstanding? I didn't answer a single question. I simply smiled and, with Rachel beside me, walked straight to the sign-in table. The officiant in charge of collecting gift money froze when he saw me, clearly at a loss. I reached into the inner pocket of my suit, took out a red envelope, and gently placed it on the table. Joanna Castro's expression darkened instantly. She strode over and lowered her voice in an angry hiss. Joel, what are you pulling this time? I smiled politely. It's President Castro's big day. I'm here to give a wedding gift and wish you a happy marriage. What's wrong with that? A wedding gift? Joanna's eye twitched violently. You're the groom. Oh, am I? I raised my eyebrow in feigned surprise. But I'm already married. Bride-to-be. You can't just joke around like this because your groom hasn't arrived yet, can you? The moment my words fell, the wedding march suddenly began. Everyone's gaze shifted toward the other end of the red carpet. Then, when the doors were pushed open and the person who walked in appeared, every single jaw dropped. The doors of the church slowly opened, all eyes fixed on the entrance, but the one who walked in was Ethan. Dressed in a sharply tailored suit, a smug smile on his face, he adjusted his bow tie and, step by step, walked toward Joanna at the end of the red carpet. The entire audience was stunned. The reporters' flashes went absolutely berserk. What's going on? Why is the groom Ethan? What is President Castro playing at this time? Are we being toyed with again? Chapter 7. Joanna was completely stunned as she watched Ethan walk toward her step by step. All the color drained from her face. Ethan, what are you doing here? She asked in a low, panicked voice. Ethan stopped in front of her, wrapped an arm around her shoulders intimately, and said softly, Joanna, today is our wedding. He leaned down and whispered into her ear. Did you forget our plan? As long as we get married today, I can help you openly and legitimately. My uncle is a well-known investor in South City. As long as he's willing to step in, wouldn't the Castro Group's crisis be solved? Joanna's entire body jolted. Only then did she remember, Ethan had mentioned this a few days ago. He said he had a very wealthy uncle and that if they got married, he could persuade him to invest in the Castro Group. At the time, all her thoughts had been focused on how to win me back. She hadn't taken his words seriously at all. Now, Faced with countless cameras below the stage and guests buzzing with discussion, Joanna was trapped between a rock and a hard place. If anything went wrong with this wedding again today, she, Joanna Castro, would truly become the laughingstock of the entire city. With no chance of recovery, she clenched her teeth and looked at Ethan, her gaze filled with tangled emotions. But Ethan seemed oblivious to her expression, smiling happily. He linked arms with her and announced loudly to all the guests, "Thank you all for coming today to attend the wedding of Joanna and me. I know many of you may be wondering why the groom isn't Mr. Joel Gonzalez." As he spoke, his eyes reddened, his tone turning earnest. "That's because Joanna's career is at its most critical moment right now, and I am the one who can offer her the most practical help. For Joanna, and for the future of the Castro Group, Mr. Gonzalez chose to step aside and bless us." "Mr. Gonzalez, thank you." He turned toward me, the smug triumph in his eyes almost overflowing. "Don't worry, from now on, I'll take good care of Joanna in your place." Ethan's words hit the crowd like a bomb. "So it's about money." No wonder the Gonzalez heir backed out. I knew it. There's no way President Castro would really give up the Gonzalez family. Turns out she found a new backer. This is getting interesting. One is the original fiancé. The other is the childhood sweetheart who came with funding. What a battlefield. The reporters' cameras went wild, flicking back and forth between me, Joanna, and Ethan, unwilling to miss a single micro-expression. Joanna's face had gone far beyond merely ugly. I tightened my arm around Rachel's and smiled brightly at Joanna. "Miss Castro, the wedding is about to begin. Don't keep your groom waiting." The Castro Group was now hanging by a thread. Joanna Castro could not afford another scandal. This wedding, she had no choice but to see it through. She looked at the sea of flashing lights below, at the faces waiting eagerly for her downfall. She closed her eyes and took a deep breath. When she opened them again, she took Ethan's hand and said, "The wedding continues." The officiant was clearly an expert at going with the flow. After a brief moment of shock, he immediately plastered on a smile and smoothed things over. "So that's how it is. A match made in heaven. A powerful union. Let's give a round of thunderous applause to bless this wonderful couple." Chapter 8. Scattered applause broke out, but most people were clearly there just to enjoy the spectacle. I stood below the stage, calmly appreciating the farce. Rachel tightened her grip on my hand and asked in a low voice, "Do you want me to take you away?" I shook my head, a playful smile curving my lips. "No, the real show is only just beginning. How could I leave now?" Holding a microphone, I walked slowly onto the stage, all eyes instantly focused on me. Joanna stared at me nervously, terrified that I might say something even more explosive. Facing the guests and the cameras, I put on a polite, composed smile. "First of all, congratulations to Joanna and Ethan on tying the knot and on your soaring careers." I paused, then took out a red marriage certificate from my pocket and held it high. "Secondly, I'd like to clarify something. Half a month ago, I already legally registered my marriage with my wife, Rachel. I'm here today purely as a guest, to offer my congratulations." Then my gaze shifted to the red envelope I had placed earlier on the sign-in table. "Oh, right. President Castro, I've already given my wedding gift. It's not much, $250. Please accept it as a token of my goodwill." $250. That number was nothing short of an insult. A wave of barely suppressed laughter rippled through the crowd. Joanna's face instantly turned the color of liver. She glared at me as if she wanted to tear me apart with her eyes. I remained utterly unconcerned and leaned closer to whisper in her ear, "Joanna, don't forget, your company still owes the Gonzalez family $10 billion in short-term liquidity. It's due next Monday. Remember to pay it back." With that, I didn't bother looking at her expression as it crumbled. I turned away cleanly, took Rachel's hand, and left the nauseating place behind. Joanna and Ethan's wedding was completed under a bizarre, oppressive atmosphere, forced through to the very end. The moment the ceremony ended, Joanna immediately dragged Ethan off to meet the so-called famous investor uncle he had boasted about, someone supposedly well-known in South City. The result? That uncle turned out to be nothing more than a thug who ran a small loan sharking operation. He sized up the now destitute Joanna, spat out a smoke ring, and said lazily, "An investment, sure, but my interest rates are a bit steep." The compound interest he quoted was even more ruthless than outright usury. Joanna was stunned on the spot. Only then did she realize that from beginning to end, she had been completely played by Ethan. Furious, she confronted him, and the two of them started shouting at each other right there in the hotel corridor. Ethan finally tore off his mask. With his hands on his hips, he sneered, "Joanna, what right do you have to question me now? If it weren't for me, you wouldn't even have been able to wrap up that wedding today. You really thought Joel that idiot would help you? Keep dreaming. My uncle was never some big-shot investor. I lied to you, so what are you going to do about it? Right now, other than me, who would want a loser like you?" Joanna trembled with rage at his shameless words. She raised her hand to strike him, but when she saw the fearless, arrogant look on Ethan's face. Her arm fell weakly back down. Yes, what did she have left now? No one in the Castro family believed anymore that the Castro group could recover. Partners who had still been on the fence withdrew one after another. The bankruptcy liquidation of the Castro group was officially put on the agenda. Unable to withstand the blow, Joanna's father suffered a sudden cerebral hemorrhage and was rushed into the ICU. Joanna was completely overwhelmed, running around begging and pleading for loans, but everywhere she went, doors were shut in her face. After all, who would be willing to pour money into a company on the brink of bankruptcy? Chapter 9. One night, Joanna got drunk out of her mind and rushed to the front of my house, pounding on the door like a madwoman. "Joel, open the door. Come out here. You heartless bastard. How can you be so cruel? Have you forgotten all the years we spent together? My dad is dying. The company is finished. Do you really want to see me die?" I stood by the window on the second floor, looking down coldly as she made a scene below. Rachel walked over and gently hugged me from behind. "Don't look," she said softly. "It'll dirty your eyes. I'll have security deal with her." I shook my head. "No need." I stepped onto the balcony and looked at the woman who had once been so high and mighty, now reduced to something pitiful and wretched. "Joanna, so now you know you were wrong." Hearing my voice, she jerked her head up, her eyes bloodshot and red-rimmed. "Joel, I was wrong. I was really wrong." She dropped to her knees, sobbing as she confessed. "I shouldn't have lost my mind. I shouldn't have listened to Ethan. I shouldn't have humiliated you at the wedding. Please forgive me." "Okay. As long as you reinvest the money and save the Castro group, I'll do anything you want. I'll divorce Ethan immediately. I'll marry you. I'll listen to you for the rest of my life." Looking at her in this state, I felt no emotion at all, only ridicule. In my previous life, I had once begged her just as humbly. When she tied me onto the helicopter, I cried and pleaded with her, reminding her of our past, begging her to spare me for the sake of what we once had. And what did she do? She smiled and said, "Past feelings, what's that? Your greatest value is dying to accompany Ethan's suffering." The memory made my heart feel as if it were soaked in ice water, cold and aching. I told her, word by word, "Joanna, it's too late. From the moment you chose to use my sincerity to please another man, we were already finished. Whether your company lives or dies, whether your father lives or dies, that has nothing to do with me. This is what you and your family owe me." With that, I ignored her wailing and turned back into the house. In the end, Joanna still failed to save the Castro group. The Castro family's villa and luxury cars were all auctioned off to pay debts. Joanna fell from the clouds into the mud, losing everything overnight, and at that very moment, Ethan vanished without a trace, taking with him the last bit of money he had scammed from the Castro family. Along with all the wedding gift money, he ran, taking away Joanna's final shred of hope. Joanna completely collapsed. Like a madwoman, she searched everywhere for Ethan, but couldn't find even a single strand of his hair. She spent her days drunk and numb, relying on alcohol to anesthetize herself, until one day, she saw me on the street. Rachel and I were just coming out of a baby supply store. I was carrying bags full of baby products, carefully shielding her, afraid she might be bumped by the crowd. Rachel's lower abdomen was slightly rounded, her face glowing with happiness. That scene was like the sharpest blade, stabbing straight into Joanna's heart. She rushed over and blocked our path, her eyes blood red, looking completely unhinged. "Joel," she stared fixedly at Rachel's belly, her voice trembling. She's pregnant." Chapter 10. Rachel instinctively shielded her belly. I immediately stepped in front of her, blocking Joanna, and looked at her coldly. "Miss Castro, stay away from my wife." "Why?" Joanna ignored me. She stared straight at me, her eyes filled with resentment and venom. "Why do you get to live so happily? You ruined everything for me. You destroyed the Castro family. What right do you have to still be this happy?" "I destroyed you." I looked at her stubborn, delusional expression and found it laughable. "Joanna, from beginning to end, the only person who destroyed you was yourself. It was your arrogance, selfishness, and stupidity that buried everything you had with your own hands. As for why I get to live so happily," I turned my head and looked at Rachel beside me. She was gazing at me with nothing but tenderness in her eyes. I smiled back at her, then looked again at Joanna and said slowly, word by word, "Because I chose the right person." Those words became the final straw that crushed Joanna completely. She lunged at Rachel like a madwoman, screaming, "I'll kill you, you bitch." My expression darkened. Before she could get close, I kicked her hard in the chest. Joanna flew backward like a rag doll, crashing heavily onto the ground and lying there, unable to get up for a long time. Security rushed over and restrained her. I looked at Joanna writhing and screaming on the ground, utterly stripped of all dignity. There wasn't a single ripple left in my heart. I linked arms with Rachel and said softly, "Let's go." For attacking a pregnant woman in public, Joanna was sentenced to 3 years in prison. The Castro Group officially declared bankruptcy on the day the court auctioned off its assets. Rachel purchased the Castro Group's headquarters building at a price no one could match. She handed the property deed to me as a gift. For you, from now on, this will be the new headquarters of the Gonzalez Group. I looked at her and smiled. The CEO really is extravagantly wealthy. She held my hand and said seriously, "Everything I have is yours." A few months later, my wife Rachel safely gave birth to a lovely daughter. On the day of our child's 1-month celebration, both families hosted a grand banquet. At the banquet, my father officially announced that the Gonzalez Group would be handed over to me, and Rachel, appearing publicly for the first time as the chairwoman of the group, stood by my side. The entire hall was in uproar. No one had expected that the once unknown stand-in bride was actually the mysterious tycoon who had topped the hidden rich list for years. Reporters swarmed forward, thrusting microphones toward us. "Rachel, may we ask why you agreed to replace Miss Joanna and attend the wedding back then?" "Joel, did you already know Miss Rachel's true identity at the time?" Rachel took the microphone. She glanced at our sleeping daughter in my arms, then at me beside her, her eyes brimming with unspoken tenderness. Facing all the cameras, she said slowly, "Because I've loved him for many years. I used all my luck to gamble on a chance to stand by his side, and fortunately, I won." I looked into her deep eyes, where my reflection was clearly mirrored. "Rachel, I love you too."